This message has a timer. When it ends, one of two futures will lock the loop you've been surviving, or the reality your higher self has been broadcasting for years, ready to choose instead of chase. Listen very carefully. Something in you already knows, the feeling that today is not ordinary, that the air itself is arranged, that the moments that led you here were not accidents but markers, subtle, precise, woven like constellations across your memory. You felt it when the screen lit up, a flicker in the chest, a tightening in the throat, a hush behind the noise. Call it ancestral memory. Call it design. Call it the whisper that arrives before language. Whatever the name, it is a recognition coded deeper than opinion and louder than doubt. You have seen traces of this truth before. Little fractures in the ordinary where the impossible threaded through your day. The right line in the right book at the exact right hour. A door that should have been closed but wasn't. A conversation that seemed written before you spoke it. You tried to explain it away because explanation feels safer than surrender, but the pattern kept returning. Not to haunt you, to guide you. Understand this. You are not here to be impressed by stories. You are here to watch a mirror stabilize. The life you call mine is not a straight road. It's a corridor of parallel halls, each one echoing a version of you already walking in certainty. The loop you've been surviving is simply the hall you visited most often. Habits became walls. Fears became ceilings. And yet between the bricks, light between the seconds. Invitation between the lines, instruction. What if the event you thought you needed, the money, the message, the miracle, was never the key? What if the key was always identity? Steady, coherent, unshakable, so magnetic that circumstances arrange themselves like iron filings around a hidden field. What if alignment is less a chase and more a remembering? The kind that humbles the voice and sharpens the vision, the kind that refuses to kneel before noise because it answers to a higher order of clarity. You've heard many words dressed up as power. You've seen empty promises carry heavy costumes, but power, real power, arrives with quiet authority. It does not perform. It calibrates. It does not scream. It selects. It moves like dawn, inevitable, exact, patient with the horizon, and ruthless with the night. If your heart hears that cadence now, it is because you were always tuned for it. Not everyone reads the same sky, but you recognize the pattern in the storm and the stillness in the pattern. Look at the story you've been telling yourself about timing. Someday, when it's perfect. When I feel ready. Yet readiness is not a mood. It's a message. It says, I will not trade my direction for approval, nor my peace for performance. It says, I trust what was placed within me more than I fear what stands before me. It says, I am not here to beg from reality. I am here to meet it with the truth of who I am. So the timer keeps ticking, not to threaten you, to focus you. Every second asks the same question in a different language. Will you continue rehearsing the loop, or will you honor the signal you can finally hear? There is no pressure in that question, only precision. One path extends what you already know, the other reveals what you already are. Stay with me. The door you thought was locked was only waiting for the right knock. The one that carries recognition rather than panic. And as this chapter opens, remember, you are not stepping into fantasy. You are stepping out of forgetfulness. The broadcast has been lived for years. Tonight, you stop scrolling long enough to notice the signal, and the signal, calm, unwavering, mercifully clear, has noticed you back. You can feel it, can't you? The quiet click inside the story, like a hidden latch releasing. Not drama, not hype. A simple certainty rising from a place you rarely let speak. It doesn't argue, it doesn't rush, it just knows. And when knowing arrives, noise loses its throne. All the near misses in your life. The opportunities that almost happened, the doors that almost opened, the words that almost arrived on time, were not punishments. They were proofs. Markers along a line only you could read, teaching you the shape of what is truly yours by showing you what is not. Call them mercies disguised, call them gentle redirections. Call them the handwriting of a wiser sequence, ensuring you don't trade your birthright for a loud imitation. Think of the loop you've been surviving. Wake, react, perform, collapse, repeat. Notice how it sells you relief while stealing your roots. It demands that you keep the volume high so you never hear the smallest, clearest voice, the one that doesn't negotiate. The loop's favorite trick is urgency without direction, running in place and calling it progress, collecting opinions and calling it truth. But you were not designed to orbit confusion. You were designed to carry stillness like a lamp, so steady that even the wind learns its limits. There is a pattern to real elevation. First the discontent, then the disillusion, then the door. Discontent says, "This can't be all." Disillusion says, "The costume is not the person. The noise is not the message." And then the door appears, not outside, but within. It does not swing for performance. It opens for integrity. It recognizes its own. When you meet the door with a heart that will not betray itself for applause, it answers without delay. Listen for what returns when all pretending is removed. That is your signature. It feels like the posture you would hold, even if nobody watched. It reads like decisions that do not flirt with who you used to be. This is not rebellion for rebellion's sake. It is alignment with what never needed decoration to be true. And in that alignment, life becomes remarkably specific. The right people appear without negotiation. The wrong rooms release you without. You are not late. You are right on the edge where imitation phrase and authenticity begins. The signs you've been calling coincidence are not tapping for fun. You're tapping for consent, not to drag you into a fantasy, but to remind you of a responsibility to be the version of you that keeps your peace in place and your dignity intact, even when shortcuts glitter. Especially then, so let this be your recall signal, the felt recognition that the loop is not your home, that your days are not a raffle, and that clarity is not an accident. The message you're hearing doesn't ask you to become louder. It asks you to become truer. And when truth sits in the center, choices stop trembling, futures stop competing. The path is not forced. It is found quietly, precisely, unmistakably yours. There is a reason the same patterns keep circling your life. Like constellations you almost recognize, then forget, then recognize again, not punishment. Architecture, a quiet scaffolding beneath the days, holding shape while your attention flickers between doubt and certainty. When you finally notice the frame, the story stops feeling random. The repetition wasn't there to trap you. It was there to teach you how your signal shapes your season. Two signals run through every choice, the one that trembles and the one that does not. The trembling signal bargains, explains, rehearses 1,000 outcomes before taking a single step. It needs witnesses. It checks the wind. It edits itself to be palatable. The steady signal is different. It carries a calm that does not apologize. It doesn't need a crowd to be clear. It's the tone in your chest that stays the same whether the room is cheering or silent. You already know which one belongs to you. Look back at the crossroads you still replay at night. The almost yes you turned into a no. The open door you treated like a test. The voice you overruled because noise felt safer than nuance. Each moment had a fingerprint. In the quiet, you can still feel it, a certainty that was present before you asked for confirmation. That certainty was not arrogance. Every time you honored it, peace followed you like a shadow in daylight. Every time you betrayed it, even victory tasted thin. People will tell you to chase momentum, but momentum without meaning is a treadmill with brighter lights. It exhausts, it impresses, it does not fulfill. Meaning is different. Meaning is the direction that remains when popularity evaporates. It is the work that feels clean in your hands. It is the conversation that strengthens the spine. It is the yes that does not fracture your sleep. When meaning leads, momentum serves. When momentum leads, meaning is negotiated away, piece by shining piece. You do not need a true is not theatrical. True is consistent. True does not split into versions to survive rooms that were never yours. True does not borrow value from applause or scarcity from silence. True holds its line with grace, and when truth becomes your baseline, the world replies in kind, doors align without drama. Delays reveal their design, and even endings arrive with a strange mercy that keeps your dignity intact. There is a dignity to restraint that the loud cannot imitate. Not every provocation deserves your reply. Not every opportunity deserves your name. The same way a priceless manuscript is not handed to every passerby. Your attention is not a public resource. Guard it like heritage. Spend it like prayer. Let your days reflect what you're willing to answer for when the noise goes quiet and the heart asks simple questions. If you've ever wondered why certain spaces feel heavy, notice what they require you to abandon in order to belong. If the price of entry is your peace, the door is not a door. It is a drain. Rooms that are truly yours won't demand a cheaper version of you. They will make the higher one inevitable. This is how you know you're standing on honest ground. You don't have to shrink to fit, and you don't have to swell to impress you. Arrive as you are. And as you are is enough. So, here is the hidden architecture made plain. Your life is not waiting for a spectacle. It is waiting for a standard that refuses to betray what is clean for what is quick. A standard that chooses clarity over noise and depth over display. Hold to that, and the pattern that once circled you will begin to serve you. What looked like a maze becomes a map. What sounded like thunder becomes a drum, and the steady signal, the one that never trembled, takes its rightful place at the center of your days. There is a moment, quiet, exact, when the heart refuses to bargain, not out of stubbornness, but out of recognition. It hears a name only, it understands and answers, without rehearsal, without applause. That moment is the hinge of your story. Everything before it feels like weather. Everything after it feels like climate. You have stood here before, on the thin line between the life you maintain and the life that meets you. One side is familiar, the loop that promises safety while slipping a price tag under the table. the performance that keeps you visible while making you invisible to yourself. The other side is simple, a posture that costs you every excuse but gives you back your name, not the one on paper, the one you carry in silence. The world will always advertise shortcuts, louder rooms, quicker crowns, temporary warmth. But shortcuts borrow from tomorrow and invoice your peace with interest. Real ascent is quieter than that. It does not storm the gates. It changes the address. It does not ask for permission. It becomes the kind of presence permission looks for. You've felt this difference, one bright and brittle, the other steady and unbreakable. One performs for cameras, the other remains when they're gone. Pay attention to the subtle betrayals that keep the loop alive, the smile that doesn't reach your eyes, the yes that empties your chest, the plan that looks perfect on a screen but feels crooked in your hands. These are not small. They are the tiny levers that tilt destiny. Every compromise with your own clarity is a quiet vote for the life you do not want, and every faithful, unfashionable decision is a bridge. Thin at first, then strong enough to carry miracles across. You are not choosing between big and small. You are choosing between borrowed light and your own. Borrowed light glows fast and fades faster. Your own light is slower, rising like dawn, unhurried, uninterested in theatrics. It reveals what belongs and what pretends. It makes counterfeits blink. It draws what is aligned and releases what is not, without speeches, without war. This is why the right doors open like they were waiting for you. They were. Notice how certain people soften in your presence and others sharpen. Notice how some rooms invite depth and others reward noise. Notice how your mind behaves when your soul feels safe. Ideas arrive dressed. Sentences land whole time, stretches, not accidents, not random coordinates. They map the frequency where your life works because you work there. So the question is not, what should I do? The question is, what refuses to leave when I tell the truth? What stays when the crowd changes? What stands when approval doesn't? What returns when I lay the costume down? That is your hold it, and your days stop auditioning. Hold it, and the timeline that matches your nature stops feeling far away. It steps forward like it was always here, because it was. And if a tremor rises as you listen, let it pass through like thunder over a mountain. Mountains do not chase storms, they outlast them. You were built to keep a covenant with what is clean, to be unbribed by glitter, to be unafraid of quiet. The timer is still ticking, yes, but not to frighten you, to focus you, to mark the instant a future becomes faithful to your name. When you reach that instant, and perhaps you're touching it now, nothing explodes, the room doesn't spin. A gentler outcome unfolds, the loop loses its voice, the noise loses its throne, and what once felt like a dare becomes a definition. Not because the world changed, but because you did not. Every day, with or without words, you're transmitting. Not from the mouth, from the marrow. People hear it before you speak. The quiet headline beneath your presence. This is who I am. This is what I allow. This is what I will not trade. That broadcast is not a slogan. It's a signal, and reality is fluent in it. Notice how when the tone trembles, offers arrive dressed as rescues but bill like debts. When the tone steadies, what is right finds you without a chase. Doors that once demanded a performance now open for posture. Not arrogance. Alignment, not noise. Clarity. The timeline that belongs to you doesn't negotiate, it recognizes. There is a difference between wishing and witnessing. Wishing stares at distance and makes a speech. Witnessing stands inside the outcome and goes quiet. Wishing exhausts because it argues with absence. Witnessing restores because it agrees with essence. One says, "Please let it be." The other says, "Of course it is." The loop survives on the first sentence. Selection begins with the second. You were taught to collect mirrors, opinions, validations, outcomes, hoping one reflection would finally feel like home. But the mirrors kept shifting, and so did your piece. The higher pattern is simpler. Set the headline first. Let the chapter follow. The chapter is not your dictator, it is your echo. When the headline reads clean, even delays arrive like couriers instead of threats. Pay attention to how counterfeits behave around truth. They blink, they hurry. They offer discounts on dignity. They promise crowns with no weight and corridors with no doors. Your signal does not need what they are selling. It needs what cannot be priced: steadiness, sincerity, and the courage to remain unedited in rooms that beg for costume changes remain. And when the old pull returns, the one that whispers, "Turn yourself down so they will stay," remember, what leaves when you dim is not your loss. It is your protection. What is meant for the truer, you cannot survive on the diluted one. Let the unnecessary unhook. Let the essential approach. Your presence is not a public negotiation. It is a private covenant honored in public. So the broadcast continues, calm, exact, unhurried. Not a plea, a position, not a performance. A permission you grant yourself to live unfragmented. The world hears it. The right people hear it. Even the future hears it, and starts walking your way, and somewhere inside the noise a silence smiles, as if it always knew you would return to the frequency that carries your real name. The timer is almost silent now, just a faint pulse under the words, a steady reminder that indecision is also a decision. You've seen the loop for what it is, a museum of former versions, polished, familiar, and priced in peace. And you've felt the truer current, quieter, cleaner, unwilling to negotiate your name for noise. This is the seam where stories split, not with fireworks, but with fidelity. What you honor answers you back. Remember the architecture: two signals, one that trembles, one that does not. Two lights, borrowed and your own. Two futures, performed or lived. You do not need to announce your ascent. You only need to stop rehearsing the version that shrinks to be chosen. Let endings be endings without rewrites. Let beginnings be beginnings without apologies. When the truth sits at the center, even silence becomes a sentence that doors understand. So here is the closing headline, clear and simple. Don't chase, choose. Choose the posture that doesn't fracture your sleep. Choose the rooms that return your dignity intact. Choose the voice that stays the same whether the crowd is loud or gone. Choose the timeline that has been waiting for your consent, not your performance. When you honor that choice, the world replies in a language you've always known but rarely trusted. If your heart feels steadier than when we began, good, that steadiness is not a mood. It's a message. It says, no more auditions for roles that cost the soul. It says, no bargains with what breaks peace. It says, I won't dilute to be accepted by what isn't mine. Hold that line. Let the unnecessary unhook. Let the essential approach. The broadcast of identity is live, and this time it carries your real name. If this found you at the exact hour you needed it, do 3 things so you don't drift back into the loop. 1. Subscribe to this channel so the next transmission reaches you when it matters, not when it's convenient. 2. Turn on notifications because timing is part of the message. 3. Comment 2 words below. I choose. Not as a ritual, as a record. Your words become a line you can't unknow. Share this with one person who is standing at the same seam between borrowed light and their own. And when you're ready for the next chapter, continue with the next video in this series. Selection versus wishing. Why reality answers identity, not words. The timer has reached 0. The lock turns where you lean. Don't chase, choose.